aunt, you can do it as a grandparent. And it really does increase your bond with your child. And the massage decreases their stress hormones, increases their bonding hormones. This leads to a whole cascade of benefits around improved nutrition, improved neural development, improved physical coordination, better sleep. It's a really nice opportunity for mother and child to just spend some quiet time together. The main part is to touch your child. It's that skin-to-skin contact. It's interacting with your child. These are the things that are fundamental to massage. And I always feel that in our society where there are more and more rules around touch and who's allowed to touch who and who's not allowed to touch who, that introducing your child at a very young age to healthy touch is a really wonderful gift for your child, because then they always have that fundamental understanding of healthy touch. You're face-to-face with your child. You always want to be face-to-face with your child when doing a massage. You can talk to them. Always like moms to just let them know what they're doing. Like, oh, we're going to do a little massage with you today. Isn't that going to be nice? Just practice putting their hands on them. Working with your child, you do want to use an oil. If you don't, you kind of catch on the skin and it's irritating. So you want an oil. On limbs, you really want to make sure you get into this little L area, L for limbs, and as well as the palms. You want to use a plant-based oil. This specific oil is not important as long as it's a quality oil. You want to use a plant-based oil, preferably one that's cold-based. It can be as simple as your household olive oil or your, I prefer something like grapeseed oil as it's lighter. The olive oil's got quite a thick touch. I tend to use something called rice bran oil. It's an oil that I found I use in my practice. And I like it because it absorbs well and it's very stable so it doesn't go rancid. Full body massage, we like to start on the legs, and you always want to start with one limb. So we start with what's called the airplane, and this is the only stroke where you want a stiff hand. So you just touch down across the foot. It's a nice simple stroke. And most of these strokes you want to do 2 or 3 times. Next thing I do is 2 thumbs coming onto the heel. We make little circles going up the length of the foot. And in terms of rate, you do want to be slower rather than faster. Slower is more sedating. If you go too fast, it can be very stimulating for baby. So you do about 3 of those little thumb circles, and then you just grasp a hold of their little toes and roll. And that's, to give you an example, it just looks like this. Now, sometimes babies will be all rolled up, both in toes and hands. What you can do is just insert your thumb inside and just work on opening those up a little bit. Next, we're going to move up into doing what's called ringing. We're going to put our 2 L's, like we talked about here. We're going to roll them back and forth. Now, if baby's not very cooperative and wants to pull that leg in, as they sometimes do, I suggest that just cup the ankle and just do one hand at a time. You go all the way up to the hip and all the way back down. And then you do the other side. So when you're doing it one-handed, it does take a little bit longer because you have to, one whole leg stroke takes a little bit longer, but go all the way up and all the way down. And after you've done that 2 or 3 times, just cup the whole leg, and this is called milking. Now, I've never milked a cow, but I'm guessing that's what it's named after. And this is the one stroke you want to avoid as your child starts to reach 3, because they get valves in their veins, and at that point you don't want to push against the pressure of those valves. So it causes varicosities in older people as those valves start to give way. You always want to do one leg at a time. It starts to help baby distinguish between its 2 separate sides and realize that different things can happen to different sides. It's a big part of the crawling mechanism is getting babies to be able to do this. I always like to finish with just a little bit of what I call the bicycle. And don't be shy about taking the knees up into the belly. This starts the whole process of just getting things moving through there. This also, of course, mimics the early crawling movement of the legs. Then we cup behind the knees and we do a little circle like this. And again, this is right to left. This goes back to the clockwise issue. This is always the direction you want to go, is from baby's right over to baby's left. The tummy stuff is, of course, our most delicate area, and it's an area that can most benefit from massage, especially if baby's having any colic or gas. This is the most basic stroke, is just the rainbow. And you can also do what's called paddling or fulling. For that, you want to put your pinky edge of your hand right at the bottom of the rib cage so that you can sink into the soft part of the abdomen. You don't want to press in or anything, but you do want to sink in just a little bit. And then just pull the hand down, pull that border of the hand down. Just like that. It's a very simple stroke. All of these things help to stimulate baby's digestion, help move food through the digestive tract, which reduces gas, diarrhea, constipation, all of those things. And of course improves absorption of the food, which helps baby grow. And then we start to transition into the chest. I do call this the cross the heart. Come all the way up from the hip. You do want to really make an effort to cup around the shoulder like this. It really feels more complete for baby, very supportive and warm. And then we move up into the chest and we just do a little heart. So you start with your fingers just at the base of the chest bone, the sternum. Come up, you make a little heart, and you come back down to the point at the bottom of that sternum. And you come up and around and down. And how many fingers you use has to do with the size of your baby, the size of your hands. It's all quite relative. It might just be 2 fingers or even 1 finger, or it might be almost the whole hand. You do that 2 or 3 times. And the arm and the leg, I try to make them fairly similar because it's an easier thing to remember. But we do start with our little thumb circles on the palm. We make circles up to the base of the fingers. And again, we just do the little rotation of the fingers next. Just like with the thumb, so you're just rotating them in their socket. And again, if they don't want to open up, just rotate the thumb in there, just stimulate the palm of the hand a little bit. And then we just grasp here at the wrist and we just give a little shake. And sometimes baby will let their hand wiggle like that, which is ideal. Sometimes they won't, but it's always nice to give it a try. We move back to our L's. And often at this point, more oil is needed in here. We get in to do the ringing, and with the arms especially, we do often see the need to just do one hand at a time, partly because of just the size of the real estate. Arms are small. Once you've done that 2 or 3 times, you do the milking, just like in the leg, down from the top, down to the wrist. And you'll notice that on the limbs, we have always tended to finish with a stroke that goes down close to the body out to the ends of the limbs, and that's because it's in the direction of hair growth, and smoothing in the direction of hair growth is a more sedating stroke, so it's a nice way to finish. The ringing is a little bit more of a stimulating stroke, but it encourages blood flow and gets more into the muscle, so that's why we start with that, kind of get things going and then just calm them down. So from there we would go on to the other arm. Do the same thing there again. As I said, you do one limb and then the other limb, but they're mirror images of each other. Then we would finish by turning baby over. Sometimes you need to let them prop up on their arms. We did the cross the heart on the front. You do the same stroke on the back. You start with your hands down by the hip. If they have their diaper off, you can start right down on their little bottoms. Otherwise, just above the waist of the diaper. You come up, you do a little crossover, and again, this completion of following your fingers all the way around the shoulder is a nice finished feeling to the stroke for the child. And then some of the biggest muscles that are working during the early developmental phase of starting to lift the head and starting to sit up and eventually walk are the muscles that run along the spine. They're called your spinal erectors. And as their name implies, they're all about making the spine be erect. So we do like to give them a little extra attention, and usually just a couple fingers is all we need. Place them just to either side of the spine on that thick cord of muscle that runs here. And we just do little circles like this. And again, if your child's a little bit bigger or your hands are a little bit smaller, you may find that 3 fingers is needed, and that's fine. And if you're a little bit wide of those muscles, you're overflowing into the rest of the back, that's fine. And these muscles can actually be traced all the way up into the skull. They go right up to the base of where the skull pokes out in the back. And we can actually follow those if baby's amenable. A lot of times in this position, the baby's head is back, so not always possible, but it is an option if baby will let you. And the other thing is too, sometimes if baby doesn't like to be on tummy, we'll get you to do the massage in a seated position, and in that position, because you can support the chest, you can go all the way up into the neck quite easily. You want to follow that all the way up, almost halfway up the back of the head, those muscles come. Do small circles, just following along one side of the spine. Now again, you're down to one hand, and you do always want to circle away from the spine, rather than bumping into the spinous processes in the middle. And then again, in that sedating manner, we want to go down, and you can actually include the back of the head in this stroke, just down. And this is a very natural stroke. This is something most parents do at some point with their child, just a gentle stroke. But again, this is just sedating. It's very comforting. And you want to keep your hands soft. You'll notice my hands were soft. They weren't rigid through the massage. You want nice, broad, soft contact and slow. So that's plenty fast. And that can be one hand or that can be two hands. And there we've covered the whole baby. It's always nice to be making lots of eye contact with your child. It's also nice to just be chatting a little bit with the child, letting them know what you're doing, asking them if they're enjoying themselves, like, oh, does that feel nice? And they'll start to communicate with you too. You'll notice that their arm will be more relaxed or less relaxed. They'll be making vocalizations, letting you know like that feels nice, or they'll kind of giggle, especially if you do some of the tummy stuff. This process, just as it lowers stress hormones in babies, lowers stress hormones in us and encourages the production of oxytocin, which moms hear about mostly in conjunction with their breastfeeding, that this is a chemical that happens then. But this happens in all human beings in the bonding process, and touch, skin-to-skin touch, is a huge part of that. I often suggest in the evening, because it does encourage sleep, you can set up a nice little rhythm of bath, massage, bed, and having it integrated into a certain part of the day can help baby be a little more receptive. We can never control whether or not baby is going to be in the right state of mind, sadly, but we can kind of try and capitalize on a rhythm to it and an expectation on the child's part that this is coming.